It was late evening in Chicago, the streets wet after a long day of rain. The little diner on 5th Street was warm, its yellow lights glowing through the window. Inside, Michael Carter sat at the far corner, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. Michael was 28, tired from work, and hungry. His wallet had only a few crumpled dollars left, just enough for one burger and coffee. Life had been rough for him since his parents passed away. He worked long hours as a mechanic, barely making rent, always living from paycheck to paycheck. The waiter brought his plate a single burger, fries, and a refill of coffee. Michael said thanks quietly and started eating. But before he could take a second bite, he noticed something. At a small table near the window sat a woman and a little girl, maybe 6 years old. Their clothes were wet from the rain, their hair damp. The mother looked tired, worried. The little girl kept looking at the menu, then at her mom, whispering something. The mother just shook her head and smiled weakly. Michael watched as the waiter came to their table. The woman ordered only 2 glasses of water. No food. Michael's stomach twisted. He looked at his own burger, then at the girl. She was staring at the fries like they were the most beautiful thing in the world. For a moment, Michael hesitated. He barely had money for himself. Rent was due in a few days. He needed every cent. But then he remembered his own childhood nights when he had gone to bed hungry, nights when he had wished someone, anyone, would help. Michael took a deep breath, stood up, and walked to the counter. "Hey," he said to the waiter quietly, "I want to pay for whatever they want to eat. Don't tell them it was me." The waiter raised an eyebrow but nodded. Michael sat back down, trying to act normal. A few minutes later, the waiter returned to the woman's table and said, "Your meal is taken care of. You can order anything you like." The woman's eyes widened. "What? By who?" The waiter just smiled and pointed at the menu. The little girl's face lit up like it was Christmas morning. "Can I have pancakes, Mom?" she asked. The mother's eyes filled with tears. She nodded and hugged her daughter. "Yes, baby. Pancakes." Michael turned away, pretending to look out the window, hiding the small smile on his face. When he finished his meal, he left quietly, not wanting thanks, not wanting attention. Outside, the rain had started again, soft but cold. Michael pulled his jacket tighter and walked home. His apartment was small, a single room with peeling paint and a squeaky door. He hung his wet jacket on the chair, sat on his bed, and sighed. He had spent the last of his money on strangers. He didn't know their names. He didn't know if he'd ever see them again. But deep inside, something felt right. He lay back on his bed and whispered, "I hope tomorrow is better." Outside, thunder rolled, and lightning flashed through the small window. The next morning, Michael was woken by a loud sound. Knock. 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 He groaned and rubbed his eyes. It was too early for visitors. He rarely had any visitors at all. The knocking came again, louder this time. Michael got up and opened the door and froze. Standing there was a tall man in a black suit. His shoes were shiny, his hair perfectly combed. Behind him was a sleek black car parked on the street. "Michael Carter?" the man asked, his voice calm but serious. Michael blinked, still half asleep. "Yeah, that's me." "Who are you?" The man smiled slightly. "My name is Richard Hayes. I need to talk to you. It's important." Michael frowned. "Do I know you?" "No," Richard said, shaking his head. "But I know what you did last night." Michael's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" The man's smile grew a little. "You bought dinner for a woman and her daughter. You didn't know them. You didn't ask for anything. That was rare." Michael's mind raced. How did this stranger know? Who was he really? Look, man, if this is some kind of scam. It's not a scam, Richard interrupted calmly. Please. Come with me. You'll want to hear this. Michael hesitated. Every instinct told him to shut the door and stay inside. But something about the man's calmness, his confidence, made him pause. Finally, Michael nodded slowly. Give me a minute. He grabbed his jacket, locked the door, and stepped outside. The man opened the car door for him. Michael got in, still unsure. The door shut behind him with a quiet click. As the car started moving, Michael stared out the window, wondering where this was going and what the stranger really wanted from him. The car moved smoothly through the wet streets, quiet except for the soft hum of the engine. Michael sat stiff, staring at the reflections of streetlights on the window. His heart thumped in his chest. He glanced at the man sitting next to him. Richard Hayes looked like someone out of a magazine. Expensive suit, gold watch, calm face. Not a hair out of place. So, Michael said slowly, breaking the silence, you gonna tell me where we're going? Richard's eyes stayed on the road ahead. You'll see soon. It's not far. Michael frowned. Look, I don't know what this is about. If this is some rich guy game or something. Richard shook his head. This isn't a game, Michael. Last night, you did something most people wouldn't do. And someone noticed. Michael blinked. Someone noticed? Who? Richard looked at him for the first time, his expression unreadable. The woman and child you helped. They matter to me. A lot. Michael felt a chill crawl up his spine. Minutes later, the car turned off the main road and entered a quiet neighborhood lined with tall trees and big houses. These weren't just houses, they were mansions. Michael's stomach twisted. He felt like a stray dog about to be kicked off someone's porch. The car stopped in front of the largest house at the end of the street. Black iron gates opened automatically. The driveway was long, lit by small lamps on either side. Here we are, Richard said softly. Michael stepped out slowly, staring up at the house. It was 3 stories tall, with wide glass windows and a perfect green lawn. This was the kind of place he'd only seen on TV. Come on, Richard said, walking to the door. Inside, the house was even more impressive. Marble floors, huge chandeliers, walls lined with paintings that probably cost more than Michael's yearly salary. A woman appeared from the hallway. Michael's heart skipped. It was her, the mother from the diner. Her hair was dry now, tied neatly, and she looked different, calm, well-dressed, like she belonged here. Michael, she said softly, smiling. I'm so glad you came. Michael looked around, confused. You live here? She nodded. Yes. My name is Sarah Hayes. This is my home. Michael turned to Richard. So she's my wife, Richard said, putting a hand on her shoulder. Michael's jaw dropped. The woman from last night, the one who had looked so tired and broke, was the wife of this man who lived in a palace. Sarah seemed to guess what he was thinking. She laughed softly. It's not what you think. I wasn't pretending to be poor. I was coming back from a charity event on the other side of town. My car broke down, and I had no wallet, no cash. I just wanted to get my daughter some food. Her voice softened. And you did that for us. You didn't even know us. Michael shifted uncomfortably. It was nothing. Just dinner. No, Richard said, stepping closer. It wasn't nothing. You showed kindness when you didn't have much yourself. You reminded us of something we'd almost forgotten, what it means to help without expecting anything back. Michael looked down, unsure what to say. Richard reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He handed it to Michael. What's this? Michael asked. Open it, Richard said. Inside was a letter and a set of papers. Michael read the first line and his mouth went dry. It was a job offer. Richard smiled at Michael's shocked face. I own several companies. We're always looking for people with character, with heart. Last night, you proved you have both. I want you to work for me. Michael stared at the papers. The salary written there was more than he'd ever made in his life. This can't be real, Michael whispered. It's very real, Richard said calmly. But it's up to you. You don't have to decide right now. Take the papers, think about it. Michael's head was spinning. He had come here with nothing but questions, and now he was holding something that could change everything: his job, his life, his future. Sarah smiled warmly. Whatever you choose, just know we are grateful. Truly. Michael nodded slowly, still in shock. Richard walked him back to the door. I'll send the car for you tomorrow. Whether you sign those papers or not, I'd like to talk again. Michael stepped outside, clutching the envelope like it might disappear. As the car drove him home, his mind replayed everything: the diner, the little girl's smile, the knock on his door, the mansion, the job offer. When he reached his apartment, he sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the papers. This could change everything. But deep down, a voice whispered, why me? He looked out the window at the rainy night. Tomorrow, he had to make a choice. Michael sat on the edge of his bed for what felt like hours. The envelope lay in his lap, its white paper glowing under the dim light of his apartment. The job offer inside felt heavy, not because of its weight, but because of what it meant. For years, Michael had worked in a small garage fixing cars, barely scraping by. He was used to living with less money, less food, less hope. And now, in one night, everything had changed. But why him? He picked up the paper again, reading the salary line over and over. It was more than he had ever seen, more than he thought he would ever earn. Enough to pay off his debts, fix his car, maybe even move out of this old apartment. And yet, he hesitated. Michael stood up and walked to the small window. The rain had stopped. The streets below were quiet, shining under the moonlight. What's the catch? He whispered to himself. Flashbacks of the past. Michael sat back down and closed his eyes. His mind drifted to the past nights when he was a kid, hungry and scared, sitting by the window waiting for his parents to come home from work. He remembered the day they didn't come home, the car accident that took them away when he was only 16. He remembered dropping out of school to work at the garage, trying to pay the bills, keeping himself alive. He remembered being helped by strangers: a neighbor who gave him food, a teacher who gave him old clothes, a man at the gas station who once paid for his lunch when he was broke. Those moments had shaped him. Maybe that's why he had paid for that dinner last night. Michael opened his eyes and looked at the offer again. This wasn't just money. It was a chance to do something more with his life. The next morning, Michael didn't sleep much. When the sun finally rose, he made coffee, sat at his kitchen table, and stared at the phone. He kept thinking about Sarah's words, you reminded us of what it means to help without expecting anything back. Maybe this was his turn. Maybe this was his chance to finally get out of the cycle he'd been trapped in for years. But still, fear whispered in the back of his mind. What if this was too good to be true? What if it was some trap, some cruel joke? He set the papers down and went outside for a walk. The neighborhood walk. The streets were quiet. He passed the kids playing basketball at the corner, the old man sitting on the porch reading the newspaper, the young couple arguing outside the laundromat. This was his world: simple, hard, and familiar. At the end of the block, he saw Mrs. Thompson, his elderly neighbor, struggling with her groceries. Without thinking, Michael ran over and carried the bags for her up the steps. She smiled and thanked him. Michael, she said softly, You're a good boy. The world needs more like you. Her words hit him deep. Maybe this was what Richard saw, someone who still believed in doing good even when life was hard. Making the call. Back at the apartment, Michael sat at the table again. The papers were still there, waiting. He took a deep breath, picked up his phone, and dialed the number at the bottom of the letter. It rang twice before a voice answered. "This is Richard Hayes," the voice said. Michael swallowed hard. "It's me. Michael Carter." "Good morning, Michael," Richard said calmly. "Have you thought about my offer?" Michael hesitated for a second. "Yeah. I thought about it all night. And..." Michael took a deep breath. "I want to say yes. Not just for the money. I want a chance to do something more with my life. I want to help people the way you helped me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Richard's voice came back, warmer this time. "I was hoping you'd say that," he said. "Good. Get ready. The car will pick you up at 9 tomorrow morning. We have a lot to talk about." Michael hung up the phone, his heart pounding. Cliffhanger. That night, Michael lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, he felt hope, real hope burning inside him. Tomorrow, everything would change. But he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Morning sunlight streamed through Michael's thin curtains, waking him before the alarm. For once, he didn't feel tired. He felt nervous but excited. He put on the best clothes he had, a clean shirt and worn-out shoes. When the black car pulled up outside, Michael took one last look at his tiny apartment, locked the door, and stepped into a new chapter of his life. Arrival at the mansion. The car drove him to the Hayes mansion. This time, Michael felt less like an intruder and more like someone with a purpose. Richard greeted him at the door, smiling. "Ready?" Michael nodded. "Good," Richard said. "Today, you meet the team." They walked through a wide hallway into a home office bigger than Michael's entire apartment. A few people were already waiting, men and women in neat suits. "This is Michael," Richard said. "He's joining us as part of a special program. Treat him like family." Michael shook hands, still nervous but trying to stand tall. The company tour. Richard didn't waste time. After a quick breakfast, they drove to one of his company's offices downtown. The building was huge, glass walls shining under the sun. Inside, the lobby buzzed with employees moving fast, screens showing stock prices and project plans. Michael had never been anywhere like this. "You'll be working here," Richard explained as they rode the elevator. "But don't think of it as a normal job. This isn't just about profit. We fund community projects, food programs, housing, education. You'll help decide where that money goes." Michael blinked. "You want me to choose?" "Yes," Richard said. "You've lived the struggle. You know where help is really needed." Michael swallowed hard. "That's a lot of responsibility." "That's why I picked you," Richard said, smiling. The test. Later that day, Michael sat with a small group in a conference room. They were reviewing a list of projects, 3 neighborhoods, but only enough funding for one. One of the managers pointed to a chart. "Option A has the highest publicity value. It will look good in the press." Another manager added, "Option B is cheaper. More cost-effective." But Michael's eyes were fixed on Option C, his own neighborhood. Option C was expensive and wouldn't make big headlines. But he knew the people there. He knew the kids who played basketball in the broken court, the families barely making rent, the old man down the street who couldn't afford medicine. "What do you think, Michael?" Richard asked. The room went quiet. Michael hesitated. His first instinct was to stay quiet, he was the new guy. But then he remembered Sarah's words, You reminded us of what it means to help without expecting anything back. Michael cleared his throat. Option C. It won't make news, but the people there need it the most. They don't have anyone fighting for them. The managers exchanged glances. One of them said, but that's the most expensive choice. Michael nodded. I know. But if we're really here to make a difference, that's where we start. Richard's face broke into a slow smile. Decision made, he said. Option C it is. The managers didn't argue. Michael felt a strange mix of fear and pride. He had just made his first big call. Dinner with the Hayes family. That evening, Richard invited Michael to stay for dinner at the mansion. Sarah was there, along with their little daughter, Emma, the same girl whose pancakes had started this whole chain of events. Emma smiled at Michael. Mom says you're the man who bought us dinner. Michael chuckled. I guess that's me. Emma's eyes lit up. You're my hero. Michael felt a lump in his throat. At the table, Richard raised a glass. To new beginnings, he said. Michael smiled and raised his glass too. Cliffhanger. Later, as Michael walked outside to wait for the car, he looked at the mansion glowing under the night sky. This wasn't just a job. It was a chance to change lives. But somewhere deep inside, he knew this was just the start and bigger decisions, bigger tests, were waiting for him. Tomorrow, he would find out just how big. Michael's life had changed faster than he ever thought possible. It had been a month since that first day he stepped into Richard Hayes' company. Every morning, the sleek black car picked him up. He now wore a clean shirt and tie instead of his grease-stained overalls. He worked in the community outreach department, helping organize projects that provided food, housing, and job opportunities for struggling families. But Michael didn't just sit in an office. He went into the streets, into neighborhoods like the one he grew up in. He listened to people, heard their stories, and helped decide where the company's donations should go. For the first time in years, Michael felt proud. Giving back. One Friday evening, Richard called him into his office. You've been doing good work, Michael, Richard said, smiling. Better than I expected. People trust you. They see you as one of them because you are. Michael nodded. I just want to make sure no one goes through what I went through. Richard leaned back in his chair. That's exactly why I brought you here. I could have hired anyone, but I wanted someone who understood what it means to struggle and still choose kindness. He handed Michael a folder. This is your first independent project. You get to choose where we build our next community center. Pick the place that needs it most. The budget's approved. Michael took the folder, stunned. You're trusting me with this? Richard smiled. Yes. You earned it. Back to the diner. Later that night, Michael decided to visit the same diner where everything had started. When he walked in, the place looked the same: yellow lights, smell of fresh coffee, same waiter behind the counter. Michael ordered a burger and coffee, just like before. As he ate, he noticed a man sitting by the window, staring at the menu with a worried look. Michael's heart tightened. He recognized that look. The man had only a small cup of coffee in front of him. No food. Without thinking, Michael stood up, walked to the counter, and told the waiter quietly, "Put whatever he orders on my bill. Don't tell him who paid." The waiter smiled knowingly. A few minutes later, the man's face lit up as he was told his meal was covered. He ordered a plate of food, smiling in relief. Michael sat back down, smiling to himself. Full circle. As Michael left the diner, he felt lighter than ever. It wasn't the money, the job, or the fancy car that made him happy. It was the fact that he could do for others what someone had once done for him, and that he could do it again tomorrow, and the day after that. When he got home, he called Richard. "Hey," Michael said, I know where we should build the new community center. Where? Richard asked. Michael smiled. Right here, in this neighborhood. People here need it the most. There was a pause on the line, then Richard said, consider it done. Heartwarming ending. Weeks later, construction began. Michael stood on the empty lot as bulldozers started their work. Kids from the block ran around, laughing. Parents watched with hope in their eyes. Sarah, Richard's wife, came to stand next to Michael. This is just the start, she said softly. Michael nodded. Yeah. The start of something good. As the sun set behind them, Michael felt proud not just of what he had done, but of who he had become. Closing moral, voiceover for video. Sometimes one small act of kindness changes more than one life. Sometimes it starts a chain reaction, turning strangers into friends, pain into hope, and ordinary days into the beginning of something extraordinary. Michael smiled, watching the kids laugh on the construction site. And it all started with one simple dinner.